The Spinosaurus is one of the strangest loose ends in the entire Jurassic Park franchise. Alan Grant escapes Isla Sorna, the Kirbys get rescued, and the nightmare finally seems over. But the creature that caused all of this is still alive. It hasn't been captured, it hasn't been killed, it hasn't even been explained, and then it just disappears back into the jungle. And there's an even bigger problem than that. This animal was so aggressive and so out of place that even Alan Grant immediately knew something was wrong. So by the time Rebirth comes around in 2027, that's when it's set, where is this Spinosaurus? What has happened to it? And more importantly, is it even still alive? Now, interestingly, I know there are some brief appearances scattered throughout the timeline. We will get into them. But most importantly, what happened to the Spinosaurus after everyone left Isla Sorna? Because this was set in 2001, and one of the biggest misconceptions about Isla Sorna at that time is that it was still a healthy dinosaur sanctuary. That's completely wrong. The DPG website, which is a canon website, literally says that the island's ecosystem had already been thrown into chaos by the introduction of the illegal species, that being the Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus had literally decimated Isla Sorna, and it was surviving on that island. That is, until Jurassic World opens a few years later. You see, Jurassic World opens in 2005. That's 4 years after the events of Jurassic Park III. And Jurassic World actually get their dinosaurs off of Isla Nublar, that's where they set up shop, and off Isla Sorna. But interestingly enough, they don't seem to have the Spinosaurus in 2005. Now, this next bit of information is extremely crucial because there is a wild theory going on out there that the Spinosaurus was transported to Jurassic World and perished for some unknown reason. It was kept in Paddock 10, and the Spinosaurus skeleton we see on Main Street is that of the original Spinosaurus, because let's not forget, the film Jurassic World is set in 2015, 14 years after the events of Jurassic Park III. The Spinosaurus could have perished by then, and they kept his skeleton to display on Main Street. Now, this isn't the case, and I'll explain why in just a second. You see, there was a canon book released called The Evolution of Clay, and it basically sets up the construction of Jurassic World, and is set in 2004. It explains in this book that they go back to Isla Sorna to poach all the dinosaurs, and the Spinosaurus was not there at that time. And there's something else huge about this entire scenario. Jurassic World wasn't shy about its dangerous animals for spectacles. I mean, the park builds a Mosasaurus lagoon, opens a T-Rex kingdom, creates a raptor training program, even engineers the Indominus Rex. So if Masrani Global had a living Spinosaurus available, you'd expect to see it and be marketed and advertised. It was never marketed or advertised. That's because they never had the Spinosaurus. That's because it was recovered by someone else who was not Jurassic World. And for those of you who've seen my other videos and Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, a Spinosaurus appears there. Now, the question here and the answer is extremely confusing, because is this the same Spinosaurus we see from Jurassic Park III? And well, the answer is quite muddy because it's not fully confirmed in the cleanest way that it is. Now, if you don't know, the Spinosaurus appears on a separate island called the Manticorp Island, which is another company kind of like the rival to InGen and Biocen, Manticorp. They basically poach dinosaurs off of the islands, put them in this kind of illegal dinosaur testing facility, and the Spinosaurus was taken there to run tests and fight other dinosaurs. And this is where it gets confusing, because the Spinosaurus doesn't sound like the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 and doesn't really look like the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3. So the only way to 100% know for sure is actually ask one of the directors of the show. So Scott Creamer, the showrunner, said that there was a good chance that it could be the exact same Spinosaurus we see from Jurassic Park 3. But here's the really important thing here. Scott actually said there's a good chance. That is not the same as saying, yes, this is definitely the exact same animal Alan Grant encountered in 2001. And it only gets even more confusing because Colin Trevorrow, the director of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and Dominion, was asked the same question. He actually said that he doesn't believe it's the same Spinosaurus, and he's the one who worked on the show and the movies. And the reason why, he said, is because it doesn't sound or look the same. Exactly what I said earlier. But a little bit of trivia for you for a real life scenario is the reason it doesn't sound the same is because after Jurassic Park 3, they somehow lost all the original sound files at Universal, so they had no original sounds to use in Camp Cretaceous, so they had to remake them. That's why it doesn't sound the same. But obviously that doesn't work for in-universe and for a lore reason. So for this part of the video, we're going to say that Spinosaurus on Manticorp Island is the same Spinosaurus, but we'll return to what happens if it isn't later on. So right now, our Spinosaurus has left Isla Sorna. It's now moved onto Manticorp Island, which is set in 2015/2016. We've now got another 11 years until Rebirth. So what happens between this point? Because you see, by the time we reach the Rebirth area, the franchise is already openly returning to the idea of other dangerous research facilities owned by InGen and dinosaurs that were way too dangerous for the original Jurassic Park. Now, we'll get into Rebirth in just a second, because we're skipping some movies here. Let's not forget we have Fallen Kingdom, which was released in 2018, and Dominion in 2022. And by that time Dominion rolls around in 2022, dinosaurs are loose in the real world. But before we get to that, let's go back to the Manticorp Island and Spinosaurus in 2016. You see, at the end of Season 5, the Nublar 6 defeat Manticorp and the president, Daniel Kahn, gets arrested. They later turn this island into a secret, dinosaur sanctuary, but that gets shut down. You see, it actually gets raided and shut down by the Department of Prehistoric Wildlife, the DPW, which is seen in Dominion. The animals actually make a reappearance in the show Chaos Theory. We see some of the dinosaurs, such as Big E.T., being taken off that island. Big E.T., which is a T-Rex featured on the Manticorp Island, by the way. But interestingly enough, they never mention what happens to the Spinosaurus, because all the animals from that Manticorp Island were relocated. It is never once mentioned after 2016 what happens to that Spinosaurus. It was obviously seized by the DPW, but where did it go? It didn't end up in Biosyn Sanctuary, under the guise of Biosyn capturing other animals, because we would have seen it in Jurassic World Dominion. And it's at this point where things get really interesting, because that Spinosaurus is now loose somewhere in the real world. There is one important detail I'd like to mention, however. I see a lot of people crop up in the comments saying the original Spinosaurus was killed by a pack of raptors off-screen by the end of Jurassic Park III. This simply isn't true. While that was a planned, intended scene, it was completely scrapped during Jurassic Park III's development. A lot of people see this ending in Jurassic World Evolution's Chaos Theory and simply believe it to be canon. It is not the case. So by Dominion in 2022, all dinosaurs are now loose on the real world, and we do not see the Spinosaurus there. We don't have any new information until Rebirth comes around. Now, obviously, we see a pack of Spinosauruses out in the ocean, hunting the boat and hunting the people on the boat. We then see them later on land. Now, it's pretty obvious to anyone watching that is not our Spinosaurus. But what is extremely interesting and potentially heartbreaking here is that Rebirth sets up a worldwide extinction event for all dinosaurs that are not close to the equator. There's this entire premise that dinosaurs out in the real world are all dying off unless they're close to the equator because of the change in temperature, the habitat, and everything else. We literally see the dinosaurs dying during that movie. Hence, they can only survive on these isolated equatorial islands and Isla St. Herbert. So if the Spinosaurus wasn't near a sanctuary close to the equator, it's a goner. It would have died. Now, I've covered this about the T-Rex, Blue, etc. in other videos, because if they were taken to the Biosyn Sanctuary after 2022, which is a habitat-controlled area, they would survive. And an animal such as the Spinosaurus loose somewhere in the real world, there are going to be reports on it. Someone is going to know where it is, someone is going to have it, someone could potentially even be controlling its habitat to keep it alive. And this next bit is really important. You see, the director for Rebirth, Gareth Edwards, actually confirmed that there were multiple various endings they were looking at doing. One of them included the T-Rex killing the D-Rex, but they opted not to do this. They also toyed around with the Spinosaurus coming back in some scenes. Not much detail is on this, but they toyed with the Spinosaurus being present at the ending somewhere and driving back the D-Rex before disappearing into the island. Obviously, that would mean that they had plans to keep that Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park III alive. Now, if they did, that would mean that Spinosaurus would be what? 29, 30 years old at least, which is doable, don't get me wrong. It is a genetic version of the Spinosaurus pumped with all kinds of different genomes, so it is possible that they could have that longevity in its life. I mean, look at Rexy in Dominion, which was set in 2022. She was pushing plus 30 herself. The point I'm making is that they considered bringing the Spinosaurus back for Rebirth, meaning someone would have moved it to this Isla St. Herbert for whatever reason. So after Jurassic Park III, the most evidence-based timeline looks like this. The Spinosaurus survived the 2001 incident, we all know that. Site B's ecosystem deteriorated and the animals were reportedly moved around to support Jurassic World. The Spinosaurus either A, stayed hidden on Isla Sorna because it wasn't part of Jurassic World to potentially be moved off-screen at a later date, or it ended up in the hands of another company like Manticorp. Now, this is important here because the Cretaceous Spinosaurus is the closest thing we have to a continuation of its story, but the exact identity of the original Spinosaurus is still not locked down on screen. The cleanest answer we have right now is that it's still alive if it got moved to a sanctuary after Jurassic Park 3. Or the darkest answer is it's become part of a dark cover-up. Either way you look at it, if you take the Manticorp Spinosaurus as the actual Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, it still goes missing after 2016. That island was shut down and the dinosaurs were taken away. We have answers to some of them dinosaurs, such as the Ankylosaurus Bumpy. She was taken secretly to live on one of the Nublar 6's estates. Some of the dinosaurs, such as the T-Rex, were also moved, but they've purposely left Spinosaurus's fate in darkness, potentially to bring it back at a later date, like they were going to in Rebirth. Which tells me if they were going to bring it back, they know it's still out there and they know it's still alive for the franchise to resurrect when they feel they need to. That is what happened to the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. But there's another question here. We've been talking about Jurassic Park 3. What happened after Jurassic Park fell in 1993 with all them dinosaurs? What happened after Jurassic World fell? Well, I have these answers on the channel and I highly recommend watching them videos after you've finished watching this. Massive thanks to the InGen research team who are on screen now, with DVM Wannabe 1018, Fallen Zaria, Kogo Legend, CCOK, Sci-Fi the Librarian, Awesome Battles, and our Jurassic CEO, Call of Duty Chocolate. Thanks, guys. And if you came across the Spinosaurus out there in the open, could your day get any worse? You bet Jurassic can. Catch you later.